Welcome in, everyone, to Spiritual Roots Podcast with me, Misty. Thank you so much for listening. Today's episode is Spooky Tales Part 2. Happy October. We're almost to Halloween. It's just in a few days. Samhain is here. The Witch's New Year. The wheel is turning, and I'm super jazzed about it. So we got a few listeners that sent in some stories. But before we get into that, I just want to take a minute to say thank you so much to everyone who has been listening to the podcast. I know I'm brand new, but I've had a lot of great feedback, so thank you so much of people just connecting and liking the content so far. So thank you. I just wanted to give a shout out to all of you and just say thank you. It means a lot to me, so I really appreciate it. So today's episode, we're going to go into some spooky tales. At the end, I might break this up into a couple of parts. Just go into a little bit of Ancestor Veneration and go into a little bit of what I do around this time of year, or when it gets closer to my loved ones' birthdays, or if I just feel called to go visit with them. So let's get into our first story. The Ghost Cat. When I moved into my new home at the end of May of 2025, I knew right away it had history. It's one of those old New England homes, I think, built in the late 17 or early 1800s. You can feel its age in the tin ceilings, the uneven floors, and the cool stone and gravel basement that seems to breathe its own kind of air. But I didn't get any bad vibes from it. The basement's a little creepy, like every old basement, but the rest of the house, I felt nothing but warmth. I love it here. It feels settled, like it's been waiting for me. About a month after moving in, something odd started happening. One night, I just gotten into bed, I turned off the light, started my white noise app, the usual routine. My cat, Ruxin, jumped down from the bed, like he always does, off to do his nightly rounds. A minute or so later, I felt that familiar movement, the gentle rhythm of a cat making biscuits. Not on me, but right next to me, on the bed. I smiled, reached my hand down to pet him, expecting to feel his fur, but there was nothing there. I turned on the light. The bed was empty. No Ruxin, no cat, nothing. At first I brushed it off. Maybe I was half asleep. Maybe it was my imagination. But then it happened again, and again. Sometimes it's the feeling of a cat needing. Sometimes it's like one circling, trying to find a good spot to curl up. A few times, I swear I could feel it settle beside me, a soft little weight pressing into the blanket. It's not scary, just strange, comforting even. And then last week it happened in a new way. I was laying on my back, Ruxin asleep against my right side. And on my left side, I felt another cat climb up, circling, making itself comfortable. I could feel the dip of the mattress, the tiny steps, but there was no second cat in the house. I didn't even move. I just smiled and thought, hey there, my little ghost cat. I don't know who it is, maybe a pet that once lived here, maybe one that never left, but it feels protective of me and the house. So that came from Kristen. Thank you so much for sending that in. I love that you have a little kitty protector along with Ruxin. I love that. A little guardian of the home. This next story is from Jess. Okay, so this may sound strange, but when I was a teenager, I had a friend over. We were in my bedroom, playing, talking like teenage girls do, when she stopped me and said, "You know, I just don't like this doll. She kind of creeps me out." The doll came with a name, which was Wendy. My friend asked, "Can you move it out of your room?" I said, "Sure, no problem." Didn't think anything of it. So I moved it to the bathroom and closed the bathroom door, and we went back to my room where we continued visiting. Some time had passed, and she eventually had to use the bathroom, which required me to move the doll out of the bathroom. I remember this day like it was yesterday. It was summer. My mom was outside hanging out clothes. The front door was opened. My dad had gone into town to do some grocery shopping. No one besides myself, my friend, and the doll was inside the house. So as we approached the bathroom, we could hear noise. We opened the door to find the doll laying on the floor, on its back, kicking her legs up and down, sliding towards us. Okay, can you imagine this scene? I'm just going to take a break for just a second. Can you imagine being a teenager and you open this door and its legs are moving and crawling towards you? That is out of a fucking nightmare. First off, dolls can be very creepy. So, to this listener, Jess, I can't imagine the fright that you felt in your heart and in your stomach. That is just spooky as shit. We were screaming and crying, trying to understand and process what was happening. We closed the door and we both ran outside to tell my mom what had happened, who kind of just blew it off. My friend was so terrified that she had her parents pick her up. This doll did not come with batteries. So scratch that off your list. My dad came home after it happened, and also didn't know what to make of this, but both of them kind of downplayed it. We did examine the doll, but found nothing. I had night terrors for a long time after that. I begged my parents to get rid of this doll. Eventually they did. We ended up selling it at a yard sale, and I thought, what a relief. Finally, it's gone. Years and years after this happened, my friend and I reconnected, and until this day, we talk about what happened and how terrifying this was. Can't explain it. Then after selling Wendy, I remember seeing an ad for Chucky, the movie, and thought, OMG, did something like this happen to someone else and a movie was born? From time to time, when Luke and I go antiquing, I have seen this doll just hanging around and often wonder. Yeah, I would wonder too, Jess. That is creepy. Dolls can be so creepy. I have a friend that loves creepy dolls. And, there's a lot of people out there that collect creepy dolls. I think there's even an island in the south somewhere. Is it Louisiana? That just has doll heads to protect, I think it's to protect the property, just hanging out in the elements. Dolls are creepy. I don't have dolls. Remember the porcelain dolls? My grandma would always buy those for me for Christmas. And they kind of freaked me out. They just look at you. Just creepy. Let me know if any of you are also creeped out by dolls. Or if you have any ghost kitties or dogs. If you have any ghost pets at your house. It doesn't have to be Halloween for us to tell ghost stories. I love it year-round, everyone. Okay, next step. This story comes from Dixie. So there was this one time when I was approximately 21 years old. I was living in Austin, Texas, and I was confused, unsure of what to do or where to go in my life. What path was I supposed to be taking? What was the purpose of my life? Did I have a purpose? And one night in my bedroom, I was trying to go to sleep, and a dark being came to me, and it was hovering over me and said, "You need to come to the dark side." So much fun. And I said, "No, I'm good. I'm good. I want to do good. I want to be good." And then the being said to me, "It's so much more fun on this side. You are meant to be on this side." And I said, "Absolutely not." And then I just started praying. I started saying the Lord's Prayer over and over and over, and then the room filled with light, and I felt safe, and I fell asleep. Dixie, that is a crazy story. A dark entity came to you and tried to pull you to the other side. That's terrifying. I can't imagine having that experience. So Dixie shares a couple of stories, and I will read those because they are also a little bit spooky. This one says, the next time we had just moved to Exeter, New Hampshire. So I guess this happened a couple times. So we just moved to Exeter, New Hampshire. We lived on the corner of 27 and 111. A house that used to be a bar, and there's also a child who passed in that house. So one of the experiences my son had, he'd gotten a bicycle and it was brand new, and he wanted to keep it inside so it wouldn't get dirty. So we put it in the kitchen upside down, and in the middle of the night, the wheels were spinning. So my husband at the time went down and said, if you want to play, now is not the time to play. You need to do it in the daytime. And no more bike wheels spun another night. The doors to the refrigerator would keep opening, closing, opening and closing again. My husband at the time went down and said, okay, this is not funny. You need to stop because we're trying to sleep. It's nighttime, you can play in the daytime, and again, it stopped. So once my ex-husband left, there was a couple of nights where a spirit was above me, and it came through my bedroom door, screaming at me. And I could see the face. It was mean and distorted. And I said, I'm not sure why you're here. You need to stop. This is not a place for you. I'm not sure why it happened after my ex-husband left the house, but it did stop after I had said that. I have a friend who is a medium, and we went up to Maine to Cape Ann. And she was mentioned in an article about being a medium ghost hunter, something along those lines. And she tried to send me the article. And I said, it's not in my email. And she said, no, it's there. And I said, no, I haven't received it. And then once I received it, I couldn't print it. And then I went back to my email, and it disappeared. And she told me that the spirits in the house did not want me to print it. I know it sounds weird, but right after that, our washing machine water pipe froze. It made such a flood, according to the landlord, that has never happened before. This all happened in that house while we were living there for a few months. A very scary house. So, haunted houses. She had a ghost child. The scary part about, haunted houses are very intriguing, aren't they? And this is the time of year that everybody wants to be scared. But if you have to live with that every day, I can't imagine how that would affect you, mentally or even physically if it decides to take any of your energy away. All right, she has one more that I'm going to read. So this is a retail story, so I'm definitely doing this one. And also, fun fact, I used to work with Dixie. So another time I was working in a Walmart overnight that is known to be haunted. There's actually a drain in the back room. However, there is steel that is over it. Whenever I would walk into the back room and look down the aisle, I could see a shadow running across the back room every single time. And I worked overnights for about 4.5 years. Then one night I was walking down the back room, and there's a sort of corner, and the spirit jumped out and had like a clown face. And I said, that is not funny. I probably look like an idiot on video talking to a corner. Fortunately, or unfortunately, it happened a few times. And then I was walking on the general merchandise side of Walmart. Everybody else was on the food side. Things would just randomly fall off of a shelf or a stack base. And I said, look, this is truly not funny. I do not have the time, so if you want to help stock the merchandise. Eventually it did stop. Wow, those were some pretty good stories. I love the ghost cat. I loved them all, really. I can relate to the retail story. When I worked retail at one of the stores, I would see shadow people darting back and forth, And this was an older store. And there was definitely a vibe in the back room. When I started retail, I was second shift. So you had the in-between time of when the store was open and when it was closing. And late at night, when the energy died down, it definitely got active in the back room. We always talked about that, so that was a fun one. I wanted to make sure we shared that. So, why don't we take a little break, and we'll come back for part 2 about Ancestor Veneration. Welcome back, friends. I just wanted to give a little bit of my spiritual practice when it comes to honoring my ancestors. So it's that time of year. I said it before in a prior episode that, this is the time of year where the veil starts to thin because things are starting to die back. The plants are starting to die down. Things are starting to calm down. And we're starting to become more open if you allow yourself to be. And one of the things that I like to, a couple of things that I like to do, around this time of year, and, if I'm called to it, especially around a birthday or a death day, let's be honest, I will go to my grandparents' grave. My grandparents were very important to me. They were a huge part of my life. I've mentioned that before. I was there when both of my grandparents passed away. I was in the room, so they meant a lot. My grandmother was surrounded by a lot of people, and my grandparents were very well loved by all of us. And so, there's nothing special there, but I was in the room for both of them passing. I was actually in the room alone with my grandfather when he passed. When they both passed away at separate times, they were within a little over a year of each other. They both loved each other very much. They raised 5 kids. There's a ton of us grandkids. And they were just the staple of our family. That's where we would gather. So I really love to honor my grandparents, and I remember them as often as I can. I thank my grandmother every day for being with me and protecting me. I will light candles for them. That's part of my spiritual practice. That's just a quick synopsis. So one thing I will do, and I've done it recently because my grandmother's 10-year anniversary of her passing just came up in August, is I'll go to their grave and I will just sit with them. I will bring them, their favorite drinks. They loved coffee. My gram had hers black, and my grandfather liked his with milk. And my grandfather also had a super sweet tooth. So I will bring them, a little treat. My gram would go along with it. They were the couple that would, they would buy one meal and share it, or they would get the same thing. They were married and together that long, where they literally were one half of the other person. And so my grandmother would eat, the sweets too. She'd always liked her cookies or whatever it was that tickled their fancies. I like to bring, we have up here what's called Muriel's Donuts, and they're pretty well known here in the Upper Valley. They're basic donuts, but they're so good. They're homemade, they're fresh, and so I will get them some Muriel's Donuts and bring them to the grave and just have a sit with them, drink some coffee, have a chit-chat, because that's what they really love to do. They loved going around to family and friends and visiting. My grandparents were always out gallivanting. They would go for a trip. They would go back to where my grandma's from, up in Maine, every summer, and spend a week or 2 up there visiting her family. But they were always on the road every day, visiting people or going to the store, whatever they wanted to do. They didn't sit still a lot. They always liked to have coffee with people and just chat with them. They were very social. My grandma was always on the phone. So it meant a lot to them for that connection to family and friends. So that's why I like to go and visit their grave as often as I can, even if I'm out grocery shopping, because the cemetery they're in is fairly close to where I go and get my groceries. I'll sometimes take the back way and just have a quick stop, just go touch their stone and say, "Hey, Grandma Gramps, how you doing? Just wanted to come and say hi, and tell them some news if something's happened." Just have that conversation with them. I also light a candle for them as well, especially if I'm having like a meditation time, or if I'm about to do a reading for someone. I call my gram in as a guide, and then any other spirit guides that I do have, and just my ancestors in general. I was lucky enough to meet both my great-grandmothers. One of them lived to be 108 years old, and I believe my grandfather's mom lived to be in her 80s, I believe, so good longevity. And I just like to include them in my practices, whether it's something that they were into or not. I just like them to know that, they're not forgotten. People do still care about them. People do still love them. And this is a great time to do that with your ancestors, even if you didn't have the best relationship with them. Like I talk about my grandparents, but on my father's side, I didn't really know my grandparents. I met my grandfather, but that doesn't mean that you can't honor them in some way. If that's something you're called to, if you're looking to look into ancestor history, ask your family members who are still with you that might know what that person may have liked in life. It's just a great practice to get into, and it gets you connected with your loved ones, with ones who helped you be where you are. And if you're adopted, you could, look into your adopted family line, however that resonates with you. Just because you were raised maybe not by blood doesn't mean that they're not your family. You could still take on traits of those folks, because they raised you, they instilled something. So those are just my tidbits about, the Samhain time, the turning of the wheel, and how to honor your ancestors. Putting out food that they liked. And, maybe you've heard this before, but this is an active practice that I do. I like to pick out the things that they would have enjoyed. Or just talk to them, and just say, "Thank you for being with me. Thank you for protecting me." However you want to do that. But I really enjoy lighting candles. Fire is my element. I love candles. I've always loved working with fire. Obviously be safe, but a candle is a great way if you don't want to do, if you're not able to go to one of their graves, if that's out of your reach. Simply lighting a candle for them and acknowledging that you think about them, that you honor them. When you go to have that meal or get together for Halloween or Samhain, you could leave something out for them, or you can even build a small altar for them. I've done that for my grandmother on her birthday. You take a picture of her, with her and my grandfather. It's one of their younger pictures from the 50s. I love that picture of them. And I would put out, pieces of her jewelry that I have, just to commemorate her for the day, and I would light a candle and let it burn out and just wish her a happy birthday. And same with my grandfather. So those are small things that you can do to honor your ancestors at this time of the year, or any time you're called. It doesn't have to be now. It's just when a lot of people like to do that. If you're able, visit their grave, give it a clean up, go have a chat with them. Even you're not going to look crazy in a graveyard, to be honest. When I go to see my grandparents, there's people there talking to their loved ones. So it really is a great place to open up and have an active conversation. Even if you feel like it's one-sided, it's still really good to do. I hope you got something out of this little nugget of some insight into what I do at this time of year. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be extravagant. It can just be as simple as lighting a candle and saying their name and telling them that you love them, you miss them, and thank you for being in your life. So thank you again for listening. This is going to end the episode for today. I hope you enjoyed those little spooky tales. I am planning on, my intention, obviously this is a new podcast, my intention is to keep building on the podcast and add things where I think of them or a suggestion that really may work for the podcast. So my intention is to do a monthly episode of a crystal and an herb. I do work with crystals. Not a lot. I have one that I really love. So the first one I'm looking into doing is mugwort and clear quartz together, because I do work with that herb and that crystal together. Listen out for that. Hopefully that will be coming out in early November, because I already have episodes lined up. So those are my intentions. If you have any suggestions, feel free to email me on something maybe that you would be interested in, that you would like me to cover here on Spiritual Roots, and maybe it will get on the show. So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you so much for the love. I appreciate it so much. You can find me on Spiritual Roots Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. You can also follow my other page, which is Sun and May Charms, on Instagram and Facebook, and that is SUNNMAE Charms. Also, if you would like to support the pod, you can please leave me a review or rate the show on Spotify. Share it with your friends, share it with your family. Whatever you'd like to do, share it on your socials. I just would really like this pod to get out to other people so that we can all just keep connecting and finding our spiritual roots together. So thank you again. Have a great rest of your October. Have a great Halloween. Have a great Samhain. And you all take care.